At 74, Charlotte Davis wakes up every morning with a smile most people half her age would envy. Nestled in a quiet coastal town in Maine, her days begin not with aches or regrets, but with purpose. While some women her age feel forgotten or weighed down by the years, Charlotte thrives. She gardens in the morning sun, dances in her kitchen while making breakfast, and calls her grandkids just to hear them giggle. But life wasn't always like this. In her late 60s, Charlotte felt stuck. Her husband had passed, her children lived far away, and loneliness quietly crept in. The house felt too big, the days felt too long, and happiness? That seemed like something reserved for youth. Then one evening, while flipping through an old photo album, something shifted. She realized that joy had never truly left her. It was simply waiting to be rediscovered. Not in grand events, but in small daily choices. And from that moment on, Charlotte made a decision that changed everything. To live with intention, one day at a time. Because happiness, she learned, isn't found. It's built. For years after her husband passed, Charlotte Davis went through the motions. She made coffee in the morning, sat by the window, and watched the world move on without her. The once lively house felt quiet, too quiet. Birthdays became lonelier, holidays more silent. Her children, busy with their own lives across the country, called occasionally, but the warmth of connection had faded into cold routine. She had books to read, shows to watch, even hobbies to enjoy, but something was missing. Then one fall evening, as orange leaves danced across her front porch, Charlotte stumbled across a podcast episode titled, "Happiness Isn't Lost, It's Created." She hit play. That moment changed everything. The host, an 82-year-old woman full of fire and wisdom, spoke directly to Charlotte's soul. "If you're waiting for happiness to knock on your door," she said, "you'll be waiting forever. But if you build it, step by step, it will meet you right where you are." Those words echoed in Charlotte's mind for days. For the first time in years, she saw a spark. Not a bright fire, but a flicker, a sign of life. She opened a notebook and scribbled down one question. What makes me feel alive? That night, she made her first list. Hearing the birds in the morning, walking barefoot on grass, writing letters, making cinnamon rolls from scratch, laughing at old movies. They weren't grand things, but they were hers. The next morning, instead of watching TV, she sat on her porch with a blanket, warm tea, and a journal. She wrote about her favorite childhood memories. She called her neighbor Grace and invited her for lunch. They hadn't spoken in months. It wasn't magic. It wasn't overnight. But something shifted. She wasn't just existing anymore. She was beginning to live. A few weeks into her new routine, Charlotte Davis found herself humming again. Life felt lighter. She wasn't cured of loneliness, but she was moving through it. She even joined a local book club, something she'd always told herself was for other people. One Thursday morning, just as she was heading out the door for her weekly walk with Grace, the phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hi, is this Charlotte Davis?" The voice asked gently. "Yes? This is Karen from Willow Grove Retirement Community. We're calling because someone named Lily Adams listed you as her emergency contact." Charlotte's heart dropped. Lily, her estranged younger sister. They hadn't spoken in over 10 years after a painful argument following their mother's funeral. Harsh words, stubborn pride, and silence had defined their relationship ever since. "She had a minor fall," the nurse continued. "She's okay, but a bit shaken. She asked for you." Charlotte stood still, gripping the edge of the counter. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. Regret, anger, fear, but beneath it all, love. She hadn't expected this call. She hadn't expected her sister to still think of her. And most of all, she hadn't expected the overwhelming urge to go, to be there. Within the hour, Charlotte was driving across town, heart pounding, unsure of what she'd say or how she'd be received. As she stepped into Lily's room, she saw the once vibrant woman now looking fragile and uncertain. Their eyes met. Lily blinked back tears. "I didn't know who else to call," she whispered. Charlotte walked over slowly, took her sister's hand and replied, "I'm glad you did." That moment cracked something wide open, not just between the two of them, But within Charlotte, she realized healing wasn't just about moving forward. It was also about reaching back, forgiving the past, and choosing connection over pride. That day, something unexpected happened. Charlotte didn't just feel happiness, she felt wholeness. In the days following her reunion with Lily, something shifted deep within Charlotte Davis. The world looked softer. The sunlight seemed warmer, her tea tasted richer, and the sound of laughter, hers and others, rang clearer. But more importantly, she felt lighter. For so long, Charlotte had believed healing meant keeping busy, pushing forward, and never looking back. But sitting beside her sister's hospital bed, holding hands in silence, she understood something profound. Healing sometimes means going back and unlocking the doors you once slammed shut. They began talking again, carefully at first. One lunch turned into two. Then came long walks, reminiscing about their childhood, their mother's garden, and the old songs they used to sing together. With each shared memory, Charlotte felt a piece of herself return, pieces she hadn't even realized were missing. For years, she had unknowingly carried emotional weight that dulled her joy. Bitterness had quietly clouded her peace. But now, she was learning that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing herself from pain she no longer needed to carry. That perspective began spilling into every part of her life. When the neighbor's dog barked too early, she smiled instead of sighing. When her knees ached on rainy mornings, she thanked her body for all it had endured. When she looked in the mirror, she no longer focused on wrinkles, but on the wisdom each one represented. She even began volunteering at the local senior center, sharing stories, leading letter-writing workshops, and encouraging other women to reconnect with others, with themselves, with joy. Charlotte no longer saw herself as someone surviving her 70s. She was thriving in them. She realized life after 70 isn't about slowing down. It's about showing up more fully. And happiness? It wasn't about changing everything. It was about changing how you see everything. One afternoon, while helping out at the local senior center, Charlotte Davis noticed a woman sitting alone by the window. Her name was Evelyn, and she reminded Charlotte of herself not long ago. Quiet, withdrawn, and carrying a sadness in her eyes that no one seemed to notice. Charlotte brought over 2 cups of tea and simply said, "Mind if I sit with you?" That small act sparked a quiet, beautiful connection. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn began opening up, sharing stories of her late husband, her love for poetry, and how she hadn't laughed in months. Charlotte listened, not to fix, but to be present. That's when it hit her. What if this was her purpose? She didn't need to start a foundation or write a book. Her new opportunity wasn't grand. It was human. It was in small conversations, shared memories, and simple kindness. It was about showing other women that life after 70 could still be vibrant, creative, even playful. Charlotte decided to start a weekly joy circle at the community center. Just a space for women to come together, drink tea, share their stories, and rediscover joy in one another's presence. She created little notebooks and called them happiness logs. In them, women would write 3 things each day they were grateful for, something they looked forward to, and one small act of kindness they gave or received. The first week, only 4 women came. By the 4th week, over 20 filled the room. Laughter echoed through the halls. Women who hadn't spoken in years were hugging. Some even brought baked goods and hand-knitted scarves for one another. And in the middle of it all was Charlotte, beaming, fulfilled, and more alive than she'd felt in decades. This wasn't just healing, it was purpose, it was legacy. Because Charlotte had learned, when you turn your healing into helping, your life expands in ways you never imagined. Months passed, and Charlotte Davis had become something of a light in her community. The woman who once sat alone in silence now radiated warmth, laughter, and wisdom. But the most beautiful part of her transformation? It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it was real. She no longer filled her days just to pass time. She filled them with intention. Mornings began with gentle movement, sometimes yoga in the garden, sometimes dancing to old jazz records in her slippers. Her gratitude journal, once a challenge to maintain, now overflowed with entries. The smell of fresh rosemary, Lily's laugh, the way sunlight touches the living room floor. She cooked nourishing meals with care, not because she had to, but because she wanted to feel good. Her wardrobe subtly changed. Brighter scarves, a bit of lipstick, and that classic brooch her husband once gave her, worn proudly now on her Sunday cardigan. But what truly marked her growth was her mindset. She didn't fear getting older anymore. In fact, she welcomed it. She saw aging not as a decline, but as an evolution, an invitation to become more herself than ever before. She forgave herself more easily. She celebrated small wins. She reached out without waiting, and most importantly, she embraced joy without apology. Even challenges felt different. When her arthritis flared up, she rested without guilt. When plans changed, she adapted with grace. When loneliness knocked again, as it occasionally did, she met it with self-compassion and a cup of tea. One evening, as she stood in front of the mirror brushing her silver hair, Charlotte smiled. Not because she looked younger, but because she had grown into herself. She whispered to her reflection, "You made it. And you're not done yet." At 75, Charlotte Davis didn't feel invisible. She felt invincible, not because she had avoided life's pain, but because she had chosen to rise through it. She had stitched together joy from small, quiet moments. She had turned loneliness into connection, routine into ritual, and aging into a powerful season of growth. And the most extraordinary part? She had done it not by chasing something new, but by rediscovering what had always lived inside her. Resilience, kindness, creativity, and heart. One breezy Sunday afternoon, Charlotte hosted a gathering in her backyard. Just a small tea party for the women in her joy circle. There were flowers from her garden, linen napkins she hadn't used in years, and laughter echoing like music through the trees. As the sun dipped below the horizon, one of the women, Helen, took her hand and said, "You know, Charlotte, you've changed my life." Charlotte's eyes welled with tears, not the kind that come from sadness, but the kind that bloom when you realize you've become the person you once needed. She had gone from feeling forgotten to becoming unforgettable. And as she sat beneath the golden sky, surrounded by women whose eyes sparkled with renewed hope, she knew happiness was never something to wait for. It was something to build, piece by piece, choice by choice, one beautiful day at a time. She looked around and thought, this isn't the end of my story. This is the beginning of my best chapter yet, because true happiness doesn't come from youth. It comes from courage, connection, and choosing joy over and over again. Charlotte Davis taught us something timeless. Happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create, one choice at a time. You don't need to be younger, richer, or have a perfect life to feel fulfilled. What you need is intention. Small habits like gratitude, connection, movement, and kindness are not just feel-good practices. They're the foundation of a joyful life. Aging doesn't have to be a decline. It can be a deepening. The more you live, the more you understand what truly matters. Presence, purpose, and people. Forgiveness lightens your soul, laughter lifts your spirit, and being open to love, even after loss, can transform your world. The greatest lesson? It's never too late. Never too late to forgive, to begin again, to find joy, or to become the woman you were always meant to be. Start small. Choose one habit from Charlotte's story that speaks to you. Maybe it's writing in a gratitude journal each morning, taking a 10-minute walk outside, or reconnecting with someone you've lost touch with. Set a gentle goal. Just for today, I will choose joy. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. Just begin with one loving action. Brew a cup of tea and savor it without distractions. Compliment a stranger. Stretch in the morning light. And if you're feeling stuck, remember Charlotte's words. You're not too late. You're right on time. Life is still unfolding, and joy is still waiting for you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and share with your friends. Your support keeps these stories alive. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if today's story touched your heart, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, stay well, and see you in the next story.